Hey everybody, welcome to the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberti. Welcome to episode number 4. The month of September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Did you know that suicidal thoughts, much like mental health conditions, can affect everyone regardless of age, gender, or background? In fact, suicide is often the result of an untreated mental health condition. And suicide thoughts, although common, should not be considered normal and often indicate a more serious issues. That's why September is Suicide Awareness Prevention Month, a time to raise awareness of this stigmatized and often taboo topic. This month is often used to shift public perception, spread hope, and share vital information to people affected by suicide. And that's why my guest this month is Amy Miller. Amy's going to share with us some tips for children and youth and how we can support not only those young people, but those who love and care for them. So get your notepad, get your pen, and get ready to take some notes. And welcome to the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberti. This is Jermaine Alberti with the Salt Talk, and I'm so glad to have with me my friend, Amy Miller. Amy, welcome to the Salt Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Well, we've talked about doing this for some time, and
We have.
I am so excited to have an opportunity to talk to you about a very important subject because September is Suicidal Prevention Awareness Month, and this month is set aside to raise awareness of this often too stigmatized topic. The goal for this podcast, I hope, will help us shift the public perception about suicide and spread hope and really share some vital information to individuals affected by suicide, in particular family members who have young people, children who are experiencing suicidal ideation, who have had actual attempts of suicide, and even those who have had children die by suicide. And the reason why I think it's so important that we emphasize young people is because what we know is that suicide is a serious public health problem among all age groups, but among youth, it exacts an enormous toll due to the significant years of potential life loss. I mean, in 2018 alone, suicide was the second leading cause of death among 10 to 24-year-olds. And so we know that youth suicidal ideation attempts and persons who die by suicide are on the rise. And so one of the things that I know that we can do to begin to address this issue is begin the conversation.
Absolutely. I think it's necessary for us to sit down and talk, to have those uncomfortable conversations in a space that feels safe, in the safety of your own home, in your car, in your earbuds, to where you can listen to it over and over again, and you can hear professionals actually sit and have these type of conversations, whether professionals, whether they're, people that you're talking to from their lived experience. It's important to begin and to also continue the conversation.
Yeah, we know some of the risk factors that are associated with suicide among adolescents include things like major depressive disorder, bipolar, substance use, conduct disorders. We also know that family history of depression or suicide can be a risk factor. But another thing that I think, two other things, and would love for you to give some tips to our listeners about how they can possibly be protective factors and help with these two things. And that is that lack of support networks, and also our young people feeling really isolated socially. What kind of tips could we give to those adults in the life of those young people that support them with those two risk factors alone?
Yeah, with those two risk factors alone, it's being present with them, sitting with them, asking questions. How was your day? How are you doing today? It's those things that in the being a parent and moving around in the scheme of life, you just may take those things for granted. That you see them, you got them off the bus, or they came in from whatever activity that they're doing at school or in the community, and just taking it for granted that they're okay because they are smiling or whatever. It is sometimes just literally checking in with them and being mindful of your response. If they tell you that they're not okay, take it very seriously, because let's be clear, Jermaine, if something happens to them, your world would stop. If they're needing your attention right then and there, then stop your world before it is stopped for you, to sit down and check in with them. Never discount them. Let them know that you are there for them, and that you might not understand what they're dealing with or what they're feeling, but you are willing to hold a space for them to help them understand where they're sitting.
I've often said that I believe that suicide is often the result of a deficit of hope. When persons lose hope in themselves, for themselves, and often lose hope in society at large. That could be in family, friends, just this hope deficit. And you and I are good for an acronym. We are good at coming up with something that is catchy, that helps people remember. If you could think of some things that could be restorative with regards to, like, how do we restore hope for our young people? Like, I know you got your little guy. Oh my goodness, how old is he again?
7. He's 7 years old.
Oh my.
And then my bonus is 15. So I have a little kid and then a teenager. So my 7-year-old, he approaches this 7 to 24 year old age of where we are looking at the second leading cause of young people passing away or dying by suicide. And then I have a 15-year-old that's right there in the middle of it, right?
And we know that there have been young people, children who have been bullied in school,
absolutely,
died by suicide. And the parents are like, what are the warning signs? Like, what do I look for? What did I miss? And I mean, we can talk about warning signs in a moment, but I'm thinking about, like, how do we give hope to that 7-year-old, or give hope to that 15-year-old that life is worth living? I know you have something in your tool bag, because let the world know that when Jermaine Alberty needed somebody to talk to, who could just, like, meet him where he was, and who set aside titles and all the stuff that came with me of who I was. It was Amy Miller who talked me through my desert and got me to the other side. Now, let me be really clear with the listening audience. I'm still in the desert sometimes. I still see mirages sometimes. I still need to check in, make sure that, am I seeing that for real?
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that the truth that I got from you in those sessions as my wellness coach is really what got me through that storm, because it was speaking truth. It was giving practical tools, which is why at the end of this podcast, anybody who needs to talk to somebody, I'm going to tell them they need to call you.
Oh my goodness.
Because you were the helper. And that's a whole other conversation, because helpers need help too.
Absolutely.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's another podcast for a different day. Yeah, it is.
But, like, what can we tell our children, our young people, to give them that hope?
Yeah. Well, here's the one thing. Well, firstly, I want to say I'm honored to have been able to share that space with you and to walk that journey with you from a coaching standpoint, that it was amazing. It is always amazing to me to sit in spaces with individuals when the light bulb goes off, right? When that light bulb just dings off to the side, like we see on television or, movies and different things like that. And you're like, they got it. Now they can go, they can fly. To sit in a space of truth. What I am a true believer of, and this is something that I have learned in my life, in my different journeys that I've been on, what comes from the heart will always reach the heart. I want to say it again. What comes from the heart will always reach the heart. So being true, honest, authentic, vulnerable, one word that we tend to be a little scared of, in which I'm understanding in my life, my lived experience and my career, that vulnerability is put out in society as a weakness. But in all actuality, it is such a strength to be able to sit in your own space and to sit in your own truth and to be able to speak to that from a capacity of, no, I don't have it all together. And I'm okay with that being my truth.
Oh, wait. Because you know how we flow together. You know
Yes.
how we flow. So I think, though, one of the things that we can maybe do to help our children and our youth is to undo the damage that was done to us, because we only give praise to our children when they do that, like, oh, you have a happy play, or oh, you got good grades, or oh, you did your chores. And so they only feel our love or our praise when they, quote, do the right
good things with the quotes.
Good thing, yeah. With the quote. And so then we punish them when they are vulnerable. We punish them when they say, I can't do that. We punish them when they say stuff like, I don't want to go to school because of this. You're gonna do this. And so instead of meeting them in their vulnerable space and letting them know that we will love them in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
That alone, I think, could be restorative of just
hope.
But if I'm there for to go home, I mean, when we were growing up, if we had somebody bullying us, our parents were like, you better get a stick and you better do this.
Because if you don't get them when you get home, I'm gonna get you.
That's right. That's right.
So here comes that builds up these spaces of fear. It is, once we look at this, which is another thing that lends off into emotional intelligence, that's a huge thing. So this is something with both of my boys, that their feelings were always their feelings to have. If they were whatever it was, happy, mad, sad, glad, fearful, confused, upset, to whatever capacity, embarrassed, whatever those feelings were, their feelings were okay for them to have. So I never shamed them for feelings that others may look at that they were uncomfortable. If there was a space where they needed to regulate, I asked those questions, and I didn't invade their space. So if they needed to have some time to themselves, okay, have some time to yourself. But I would, as mom and as other mom, go in and check on them. Are you ready? Are you okay? Do you mind me coming in? This is one thing that I think that we forget as grown-ups and as parents, that it's almost like when we become grown, it is now, it's my turn. I get to boss people around. I get to boss my kids around. I get to do this and I get to do that to them. And it's now this rite of passage that I don't have to consider my child as a human being. I just consider them as my child. So we take the humanness out of that space for little people, because we are telling them what it is that they need to do. So when we do that, Jermaine, we take away autonomy. We take away their choices. So we are at the beginning. If we are parents that are doing that, we are taking away their choices. We are greatly reducing their spaces of critical thinking. that they will need throughout their lives to determine what are the best choices. They may not be the choices that we want, but what are the best choices for me in that situation? If we teach our children, or we work with our children to make them safe, where they feel safe emotionally, then guess what, Jermaine? They grow up and they become emotionally safe young people. They become emotionally safe men and women. And so that is the space, another space of instilling hope in them, to let them know that they are safe with whatever it is that they bring. This is one thing that I tell my youngest. I don't care what it is that has happened. I don't care if you did it, if someone else. I am your advocate. Your father and I, we are going to advocate for you forever. But when you don't tell us everything that is going on, your part and the other, and anybody else's part, then I don't have all the information, and I can't advocate for you in a manner that is going to get the result that everyone is looking for, right? So he just did something a couple of weeks ago at 7, right? Because he wanted to be somewhere, and he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And then he kind of just looked at me and was like, okay, well, I did do this. And I'm like, okay, so now it all makes sense. It doesn't mean that there are not going to be consequences to your actions. But I don't want you to be so scared to tell me how you're feeling, what's going on, because that's an action that he did. But sometimes if you don't make your child feel, if you are not putting your child in a situation where they are feeling emotionally safe, Jermaine, then they're not going to, if they don't feel emotionally safe, that if someone else is messing with them, they're not going to say anything to you either. So then you're in the dark. So you're not advocating for them, and then you're not showing them how to in turn advocate for themselves either.
I'm hearing so much here, and one of the things is, there's several things that came to me, but one of the main things that came to me is that the consequence that I have for you is not to harm you, but to help you.
Absolutely.
And I think that becomes the thing that makes you so scared to talk to us, because in many communities, consequences mean harm.
Yes. Consequences in a lot of spaces, they mean harm. And here's the space. It may not mean that there's not going to be some type of harm to you. But if you don't, if your little person or your young person doesn't, if they're in a situation and someone is always doing it for them, they never learn how to critically think of the options that they may have to do left, to go left or to go right, to go up or to go down, to go right, to do right or wrong. If we're going to, put it from a moral standpoint, we have to allow them space to grow. Sometimes we want to helicopter them so much that they don't learn that they have hope.
Yeah, and the reason why I wanted to make that parallel between consequences from harm to help is because so many times we don't explain to children or to youth why there is a consequence. And so the intention is to help. I want to help you understand that if you do this, I'm your parent. I love you. And so my consequence is me talking to you saying, don't do this. But in the real world, this can mean death. In the real world, this could mean jail. In the real world, this could mean this. And so I want to equip you for the real world. So I'm going to love you. And there's a consequence here, but it's designed to help you, not to harm you. And I think that, to me, is so important. In the book that my colleague, Rose Jackson Beavers, and I wrote, called Bought Up Inside African American Teens and Depression, There is a acronym that I created that I used when I was helping my son who was wrestling with suicidal thoughts. And that acronym I created was called the HELP model. I started off with the H standing for we have to hear our young people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when we hear our young people, I believe, that we can truly engage our young people. Because often they filter what they say to us based upon what they think we want to hear.
Yes.
And so we have to, just like with your 7-year-old and your 15-year-old, you're saying, listen, I want to hear the truth. Tell me, just tell me, because if you don't tell me, the consequence becomes worse because I can't defend you. I can't support you. So tell me what it is that you are
No matter
experiencing.
what.
And for my son at that time, I believe he was just trying his best to be the best PK kid he thought he could be, wrestling between the anxiety of what if I tell my dad I'm doing ABC. And so by truly hearing his truth and meeting him where he was, I was able to truly engage him. And when I was able to engage him, which is the E of the help model, the L part is I was able to learn from him.
Absolutely.
And by me learning from him what he truly needed, the P part of that model is plan. It helped us create a plan in order to truly address where he was. And so I think when we're talking about how do we help young people, how do we give them hope, it begins with us hearing them, engaging them, learning from them, and planning with them.
Yes.
That
With
they are,
them, not doing it for them. Not
yeah.
doing it for them. And I think that that becomes important because everyone should have a space, no matter what age they are, a space in the story of their life. Right? So I love how you did this, how we did this acronym. And I want us at some point to kind of talk about this because you mentioned um, some generational things like maybe, you know, there's a history of anxiety and depression in the family. Sometimes there is a chemical space, a chemical imbalance that's there that hope is just not the first thing that comes to an individual. Sometimes suicidal ideation is a space that individuals just deal with and they manage every day of their lives, every single day. So I think in things in spaces that I have experienced in losing someone very close to me um by suicide, um that sometimes it's you can only do so much. One thing that as parents or as individuals, we cannot go against someone's will. Sometimes it just is, right? So that P becomes very important because once we assist an individual with a plan with their collaborative help, right? This may be something, these are things that they can put in place that helps them to calm down the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of those those ideation thoughts that they have. Sometimes they're just going to be there. And here's the other thing. It's okay to get a little help. If you need some medication, it's okay. It's okay for you to go to a therapist. For those of us that are, on this podcast or that's listening to this podcast and they are churchy. And I mean, rolling around in the floor, churching it up. It's okay for you to love the Lord and get you a therapist. It is. It's okay. And it's okay for your children to get some help for your kids too, right? It's okay if you need some medication. And I think we've talked about this before, Jermaine. If your chest is hurting, you're going to go to a hospital and you're going to say, and with you praying about it, you're going to go and you're going to say, I need to get my chest checked out. I've covered my bases spiritually, but I need a medical person. It's the same thing when it comes down to the mind. If you are not emotionally and mentally healthy, go and find you somebody that you can talk to that's got the skills and the qualifications to assist.
Well,
Okay.
and that begins with us setting that example that if
Absolutely.
we need help, that we go seek the help. I mean, I think that our children model what they see us do. And so
Mm-hmm.
we are so stigmatized that we won't get help ourselves, then we often won't get help for our own children because somehow that stigma carries itself. I really know that some folks may say, well, what are the warning signs of suicide? And there are many. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say that I don't want you to get stuck on trying to get a checklist because they will look different for all people.
Yes, they will.
We talk about signs and symptoms from a culture consideration or a culture perspective. There's just some folks that are just moody people.
Yeah.
So just because somebody's moody don't mean that that person is suicidal. They just be very, very moody.
Mm-hmm.
This generation sleeps a whole lot to me. They just sleep too much, in my opinion. I'm like, get up, do something.
Well,
But
you have to remember when you were a teenager, you may not have slept much, but most teenagers that I know, they spend a lot of time with their eyelids shut. If they're not in social media, they are sleeping. I don't know if it's a growing thing, I have no idea. Um, but I do think the way that we respond, um, it would not help a child if you say they're saying that they're feeling like they want to harm themselves. Oh, that's ridiculous for you to
mm-hmm,
say. What do you
mm-hmm,
have a great life? What are you
mm-hmm.
complaining about? Why would you want to end your life? Oh, you don't mean that. I can't believe what I'm hearing. What that says to your child is that even though you're asking how I'm doing, you're not really listening to me. So
Mm-hmm.
that means that whatever it is that I would have said further, I'm not going to say it to you, right? Sometimes, lots of times when there is a space of suicidal ideation, they're going to say something. You got to pay attention. And every time and everything that they say, we need to take it seriously. We need to inquire and ask more questions. We need to meet them at their level. And sometimes as adults, we forget that we were teenagers once, or we ignore the fact that they're kids. And like I was saying before, we have this badge of honor that I'm an adult, and so you got to do it because I said do it this way, when they're looking at you like, I don't understand that, and this is the reason why. These phones and these computers here, it can tell them everything that they need to know about
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
right? So nothing discounts and discredits that physical space or that physical word and touch that they can get from you. Sometimes we want to replace what we think, like, oh, you got a good life. Um, you can have a good life. Why would you want to do that to it feels like you feel like some things are complicated with you right now. I can understand that. Let's sit down and let's talk about it. Guess what? If you don't want to talk to me, guess what? I'm going to find you somebody that you can talk to,
yeah.
because I don't want to discount what it is that you're saying. I want you to have somebody that you can talk to, right? Get help. Get help.
And what I hear you saying is really value our children and our youth voice. Like, don't discount them, don't dismiss
Please
them.
don't.
Value what they have to say. Research shares with us in research that 4 out of 5 suicide deaths are preceded by warning signs such as suicidal threats, previous suicide attempts, preoccupation or obsession with death, depression, and even youth making final arrangements. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you won't miss me when I'm gone, so forth. And
That's it.
the Healthy People 2030 initiative has over 300 plus objectives, but one of those objectives is to reduce the rate of suicide attempts from 8.9 to 1.8 attempts per 100 adolescents. Thinking
Mm.
about that, 8.9 out of 100 adolescents are dying by suicide. If we can reduce that rate to 1.8 attempts per 100, that would be phenomenal. That goal is by 2030.
Mm.
And I think it's really good to know resources. So, for instance, the American Federation for Suicide Prevention, the website is afsp.org. Once again, afsp.org. If you're a young person in crisis and you're like, I just don't know how to manage that, you don't have to manage it by yourself. You can call or text 988, or you can text talk to 741-741. Once again, you can call or text 988 or text TALK talk to 741-741. Here's what I want to convey to everyone listening. If you are suicidal yourself, if there's a young person or a child that you know is suicidal, you are not alone. There are people out here who are trained and who want to help. And so you don't have to do this alone. You like you're not by yourself. And one of the things I know without a shadow of a doubt, that the reason why the Soft Talk with Jermaine Alberti has come into existence is because I want to be able to give voice to the voiceless. I want to be able to create a space where people can hear these topics and be able to share them with other folks and be like, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you know? Did you hear? Did you know that help is available?
Absolutely.
The SALT Talk, SALT stands for serve, affirm, love being kindness and compassion, and T being transform. I ask every guest, how are you being salty? How are you making your flavor known in this earth realm? How are you serving, affirming, loving, transforming? I know my friend and your mutual friend, Candace, who I'm about to get on this podcast with us.
Absolutely.
By way of Chaos is doing some wonderful work. So that's part of how you're being salty. But you also got some other stuff that you're doing too. I want you to share with our listening audience what you're doing to make your flavor known and how they can know more about that.
As I oftentimes think about, like, how do I want to show up in this world? And being of service is how I show up in this world. Being a clinician, being a mom, being a daughter, being a caregiver, showing up for my friends. Those are those social spaces. Professionally, I do therapy, and I create spaces of hope for people every single day. And I'm always humbled by those experiences that I have. It lets me know that I'm where I'm supposed to be, and I'm who I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah.
You're being very humble in this. Listen, y'all, I'm telling you right now, you need to reach out. First of all, she may not even have space for, I don't know, but what I think you need to do for sure is, like, even if it's not Amy, reach out to somebody and get some help for real. Get the help you need. Like, you don't have to do this thing alone. You just don't. You don't. And I know I've said that before, but it's just in my heart to say you don't have to do it alone. You don't. What would be a last message that you want to leave with the listening audience? Anything, like one more thing, one takeaway?
There's one takeaway that I would like to share with the listening audience is to be present. Be present in your world, your space. Become a main character in the play of your life. You do not have to be the two-dimensional tree or the rock that when the scene changes or when things change in your life and the curtains close and they open back up again, that they change the rock and the tree. You are a main character. Stand up for yourself. Be true to yourself. Teach people how to treat you, and they will move accordingly.
That's that rich stuff I've been talking about, y'all. I'm telling you,
Mm.
don't allow other folks to write your narrative.
Mm-mm.
I don't care what your family history is. I don't care what your yesterday was. You have the ability to control your narrative. And so we speak life, we speak hope, we speak peace, we speak joy. And listen, I want you to share this episode and let someone else know that if they are in need of help, once again, reach out to that number 988. Text talk to 741-741. Listen, you all have been listening to another episode of the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberty. My guest has been Amy Miller, and I'm looking forward to some more talks with you, my friend.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you. Friends, thank you for listening to another episode of the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberty, and I'm so excited for part 2 of episode 4. Recovery is possible from trauma to healing with our guest Antoine Roston. So I invite you to click part 2 of episode 4 of the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberty.